Welcome back. That's sign language for welcome back for the Great Expanse by John Bat 426. It's a pleasure to always record these videos, to edit them, to put my unique spin on them. Wax on? Nothing. But as I said, it's always a pleasure. I'm thankful and grateful for all the subscribers that we have, which isn't much. But I'm glad for the guys that tune in. Everybody that shares the video, everybody that likes the video and comments, thank you so much. And I would actually like the commentary. I would actually prefer the dialogue between myself and you guys to build a rapport. You know what I mean? And you know what this video is about. You clicked on the thumbnail. It's about Loki Season 2, Episode 2, titled Breaking Brad, which is an obvious take on Breaking Bad by Bryan Cranston. I mean, not by Bryan Cranston, but featuring Bryan Cranston as Walter White. This episode was a severe step down, maybe several steps down from the first episode, Ouroboros, from last week. I was watching this episode, and I fell asleep only because I was tired. All right, but I was bored. This is a very boring episode, and again, it really pained me because I had such high hopes coming into this episode. Because the way the series started off last week, I was like, okay, I'm hurrying home to watch this as soon as possible. So when I'm watching it, I'm like, who is this Brad guy? Like, he's not like he's a plain looking person. He's like a movie star, in 1977 in London, okay, on the Sacred Timeline, the main one, okay, that the TVA, enforces. And I'm like, all right, so Loki and Mobius track him down to a premiere. I think it was like a premiere or something for his movie. Okay, and he's a former hunter. I thought that was the guy from the first episode, but I wasn't sure because I said he was so unremarkable looking. Like there's nothing to this guy. So Mobius says either he's a variant. Wait, what did he say? Either he's a variant or he's undercover. So as soon as Mobius shows up inside of the theater, the guy's like, "Oh, Mobius," so that lets you know that he does know who Mobius is. So it's not a variant. So there's a chase. Loki is running after him for some reason. I mean, he's the god of mischief. He has all these powers, and they're both doing the Tom Cruise running towards the camera. You know what I mean? And so Loki corners him, and finally he like shows some of his like edge, some of the stuff that makes him a supervillain. Loki is a supervillain. He's not an anti-hero. They just made him that way for this series. As I've said, if this was how a story was to play out for the real Loki, he would somehow be tying everything together to work for his own selfish aims. So the whole thing about lives, he would be lying because he's the god of mischief. Okay, but in this series, he's kind of an anti-hero. He's very compelling. I mean, he's a great character. But I'm talking about in terms of comic book accuracy and MCU accuracy, they're incongruent. You know what I mean? It doesn't do this. It does this. It misses. Okay. But it's not a slight on the series or the character. I want to make that clear. So then, like, he's like cornering him. He's using his holographic, the illusions he uses. And then he has these two like shadow shadow beings. And you see like the horns come out. And he's just like, he's not doing anything really because he's just there with his like hands in his pockets, almost like the James Bond pose. And I'm like, this Loki has an edge, which we really haven't seen too much of. He almost felt like Dracula. You know what I mean? Because he's dapper, he's nicely dressed, good looking guy, whatever. And he just has that face, like, and I'm like, okay, I'm digging this. So then, this is where the episode sort of tapers off. The interrogation of Brad. It's very time consuming. It's very boring. It's kind of pedantic. Pedantic, a great word for the Great Expanse by John Bat 426. It's like, he's not even really saying that much to like get Loki's, wound up, to get Mobius wound up. And his acting isn't great. I mean, it's like, his facials aren't great. You don't get the sense that anything he's saying is really enough to get their goat. And that's just a term, to get somebody's goat or whatever. In other words, to get them to break or whatever. Am I ghosted? A little bit. But anyway. So it's like, Loki's like, And I guess he's like fighting his inner rage, the inner villain. But as an audience member watching it, I'm just like, you just get to it. You know what I mean? It's like, are you going to do something? Perhaps I've been saving it for just this moment. And Brad's like leaning back, like, and Loki does nothing. Then he does this. Brad does the same thing to Mobius, and Mobius is like moved and like slaps the guy in his face. He's like, "You're a little man," and like I said, the direction of this episode just went haywire. Not that it was frenetic, okay, but it was just boring to me. I'm like, okay, like Brad's a tough nut to crack. No, he's not. Like, this isn't like Clarice Starling asking, Hannibal Lecter for information about Buffalo Bill. This is just like, it didn't work for me. I didn't buy the Brad character. The Brad character was a waste to me. Like I said, I didn't like his acting. So Loki comes back in later with this huge, like, vacuum cleaner. So it looked like an old school 70s vacuum cleaner in the TVA, okay? And then at first I just thought it was like a MacGuffin, not for the story, but just to like intimidate Brad. Placebo, is that the right word? A placebo, like it really wasn't an interrogation machine. I just thought it was something just to scare Brad, so he would think it was something, but it actually was something. So Loki locks Mobius out of this holding cell, which is massive, right? And he's like, this controller, which is to get the machine to start working. Because Mobius was thinking, oh, we gotta go find the controller, but Loki had it the whole time. And he installs the controller, and it really is an interrogation machine. It's like a box that like closes in on Brad. And Brad, what was the last thing he said? He said, she got a new life! So then Loki lets him out. So he lets Mobius back in. They turn their back on Brad while the door is open. And this is just my brain, okay? I'm like, why'd you turn your back on him? Can't he like run out of the cell? But again, maybe I'm just overthinking, all right? So then, okay, another part. And again, I don't like to really do these reviews where I'm just recalling the entire episode. A week later, it hit me that OB, I think, is the actor that played Short Round from Indiana Jones and Temple of Doom, and he was the same kid in Goonies. A week later, I'm thinking that. So, like, things come to me late sometimes. So he's saying that something is wrong with his, because he's going to inject one of those, like, generators, or whatever they are. They had so many devices or whatever, into the temporal loom, I guess, to get it to, like, calm down or something, because it's, like, out of control. And so his aura doesn't work, okay? And basically, they're saying that he who remains is the only one that can do it, because he who remains was the one that built it. All right, so they need to find he who remains. So clearly they've taken Loki at his word, because nobody should know who he who remains is. So I guess they're saying, well, Loki must be right about this. And I guess when he stabbed the wall and, the temporal, whatever, it kind of like dissolved, and you could see that big face of Kang. Because I know a lot of people are saying, wait, how is that possible? In the past, it was there, or the future. And those time sticks, they kind of like undo time a little bit. So I bought it. So again, Brad, unremarkable character. They go to Broxton, Oklahoma in 1982, and that's where we saw Sophie in the end credit scene from last week. Loki talks to Sylvie. And it's funny though, because she's acting like she's the one that's been done wrong when she's the one that ruined everything. She's like, I'm not coming back. She's like, the problem is the TVA. I'm like yelling at the computer. I'm like, you're the problem because you messed everything up. You're the reason all these Kangs are coming back. Sylvie taking no accountability. So then I had to take a step back, and I'm thinking, okay, that's just her villain mind. So I was like, okay, all right. She's just an idiot. Yeah, I mean, her brain is just unwired correctly. You know what I mean? So then Mobius is talking to Brad, and again, I hated every time this guy was on camera. All the screen time was just a waste to me, because I do not like the actor's portrayal of this bland Brad character. So while they're talking, they're eating in the old McDonald's or whatever. All of a sudden, it just hits Mobius. He's like, wait a minute. Could this be a setup? So Brad, this is the kicker, okay? Judge Dox from last week, the one that I said thought looked like Frau Farbissina from Austin Powers. She's the actress that played Lysa Arryn. That's where I saw her before from Game of Thrones. Okay, she was the one that was breastfeeding her like 10-year-old. Anyway, sorry to give you that image, but apparently she was bombing all the different branches. So we're talking billions of lives. We're talking about entire worlds. That's a reality branch. There's an entire world in that branch. So she's bombing. And I'm like this. I'm like, wait a minute. You're telling me this kind of an event, her bombing entire... I think a case said that they bombed 30% of the branches. That's like an end game. To bomb an entire reality? The execution is very underwhelming. I'm like, this is a major event. This was almost like something that could have ended the season. It's like, wait a minute, this woman has been bombed, and they kind of just throw it into the second episode. I'm like, why have we minimized all the lives on these branches? And to me, it was too big of an event. To have to see one branch reality bombed should have been like, oh my god, like that should have been like in the middle of the season. Or, you know, sort of like a mid-season finale, whatever. Like they have those in regular television. And then like the whole end game for the end of the season should have been, we got to stop this lady from bombing timelines before even another timeline. But it's just like, oh, she's just bombing all these timelines. So they really cheapened it to me. That's how I took it. So, and they said it's all being done from this one control area. So there's like a forced fight. I'm like, okay, in this small enclosure, why didn't Loki and Sylvie just send up a whole bunch of illusions and just like unplug everything? You know what I mean? Like, or just like, while he's like looking at this illusion, you just like do like a Vulcan nerve pinch. Because I'm sure Loki has that kind of powers. You know what I mean? To just like tap somebody and they fall out. So the execution of this episode was very bad. They just like disarm Dox and, you know, like stop it. I'm like, this was poor. I'm sorry. This was poor. That something that massive was just thrown into the second episode. And again, the Brad character, very unremarkable, very boring, a lot of talk that isn't even compelling dialogue. Like, there's no nuance to it. This episode, I'm sorry, but it gets a C+. And I'm almost feel like I'm eating my words. I'm forced to eat my words. Because I was saying that Loki Season 2, the way it started with Ouroboros, this should have been the beginning of Marvel's Phase 5, because it just feels different. This second episode was such a letdown. And I'm gonna stick to the C+. Maybe I'll watch it again, you know, after, you know, my heart is healed. But anyway. So, C+, I don't know if that's plus or not, for Breaking Brad. Again, I hated this Brad character. Not great acting, not great portrayal, not great dialogue. C+, MCU, let's do better next week, please. And the poor execution, the underwhelming conclusion to this episode, that this like this is multiple extinction level events. Did you hear what I'm saying? An entire reality has been bombed. Okay, I'm talking about just one. Remember, they said they were just bombing all these branches. These are extinction level events for the people living in these timelines. Horrible. God awful that something that huge wasn't at the season finale. Shame on you, MCU. You've got to do better.